State Representative Jeffrey Elmore with the weekly session update for 325. Unlike last week, there was a lot of action this week in the House in various areas. We moved several bills out of the House and sent to the Senate. The overarching thing for this week was the governor released his budget today. Here's the budget document here. We had a briefing on it this morning. And just like at the federal level, when the president releases their budget, the reality of this document being passed in the form that it is in is just not going to happen. But it is the first step of the budgetary process. So that happened today. There was a lot of spends. That was a big concern of mine, was the amount of spending that was in it. Our revenues have been very good considering what has happened with COVID. But basically, his budget proposal spends all the additional revenue that we took in and also borrows additional revenue to make a spend total of almost 11% for the biennium. The Democrats did this several years ago when the economic boom happened in the mid-2000s. They increased the budget double-digit, 10-11% at that time. And then the housing crash happened and we went into the deep recession. And then that created major problems with unemployment insurance did not have monies, the rainy day did not have monies. All of those mechanisms that were supposed to protect financial downfall just didn't work because of the actions they took in 2007. So the reality on the spending that is in here is unrealistic, and it will go through the budget process so we can work on it. I want to talk to you about an interesting bill that we get a lot of constituent questions about that is currently moving in the Senate. The Senate had committee hearings this week with the elections director talking about election law and changes that took place in North Carolina in the fall. And after that hearing, what was brought out of it is Senate Bill 326, and they're calling it the Election Integrity Act. This act would require the absentee ballots to be requested at least 14 days before the election, and only ballots received by election officials by the close of the business day on Election Day would be counted. This makes it very clear the procedure for absentee ballots in North Carolina, which our procedure was pretty strong, but because of changes that the election director made, they did allow ballots to come in if they were postmarked after the election date. So this clarifies that, and that's moving through the Senate right now. I want to talk to you about some bills that I have filed this week in the House, and some of them have had committee hearings already. House Bill 69 is Holocaust and Genocide Bill. This requires that the word Holocaust and the events surrounding Holocaust be included in the standard course of study in social studies. It creates a collaboration with the Council on the Holocaust, North Carolina Council of the Holocaust, NCAT, DPI, that they use the Never Forget Act from the federal government as a basis to work on curriculum materials to meet this mandate. I think it's very important that we never forget the Holocaust and the 6 million folks that were killed in that process in World War II. And the Holocaust is not specifically mentioned anywhere in the social studies curriculum or even in the revised social studies curriculum, which is controversial within itself. So I think this was a good, solid move. It had a committee hearing in K-12 this week, got a positive vote, and now it moves to appropriations because it has some money tied to it. Also, I filed House Bill 249. It's the Children with Disabilities Funding Formula Bill. This looks at our current funding situation for exceptional children in our public schools, and also what do we need to do from here on out. And it directs the department to come up with, you could call it maybe a tiered system, where we can actually fund the children based on the severity of their disability to move in the right direction. So we can ensure that a child with severe disabilities is getting the proper funding that they need for their education. I also sponsored a bill that got some good press in the News and Observer, and I did not post that to Facebook because there's a paywall with it. It's revised the personal leave costs for teachers. This bill goes into the personal leave statutes, And what it would do is ensure that a teacher, if they are taking one of the 2 personal leave days that they get for the year for truly personal reasons, a funeral, a house closing, events that everybody has in their life, that they can take that day without being docked in pay. Currently, if you do take a personal leave day, you have to get it approved, and you also get docked $50 for the day. What this would do is allow the teacher to take their day as long as they cite a reason with their principal and the principal approves it. So basically, if I needed to attend my child's graduation that was at a university out of state, I talk with the principal, put down the reason, graduation, and he would approve it, and I would not be docked in pay. So right now, what teachers are doing to make up for this is actually utilizing sick days, which is not an appropriate use of sick days, because if something truly happens to them health-wise, they need those sick days to offset. So clarifying these statutes, I think, would be very beneficial to the teacher. A couple of things that I co-sponsored that I get several emails about is the Save the Women's Sports Act. There has been some decisions because of the push from the federal level dealing with the transgender athletes participating in women's sports. Many of the women athletes are terrified because they feel like that this has just basically annihilated all of the efforts that have been made in women's athletics, especially with all the work with Title IX over the years and making sure there's equitable offerings of women's sports. And there was a decision that was made by the North Carolina High School Association that kind of aligns with what's being pushed from the federal level dealing with including transgender athletes. Basically, what this would do is, for the college level, it ensures that women's sports are women's sports. This bill seems to be controversial in some sectors, but I co-sponsored the bill with the primary sponsors because of concerns from not only personally, but from the district also. Something else I co-sponsored that I think will help a lot of retention of teachers in rural areas is the North Carolina Teacher Support Program. This is a fun bill. This is a program where there's partnerships created with the universities and community colleges in certain regions of the state that basically, if a teacher goes into the program, that they are guaranteed employment in the surrounding systems. This model has been tried out and it does work, and I think it would be very effective in certain areas of the state where we have major retention problems. We're real blessed in Northwest North Carolina. We have some of the best retention and recruitment rates in the entire state because of Appalachian State University. Other states do, or other areas of the state do not have that benefit, so I was happy with that. There'll be more next week. We will be delving into the beginnings of the budget process more next week, and of course more bills moving and being filed.